and welcome to Books at the Bottom of the Stairs, and sometimes the cat. She's having a nap right now, so maybe she'll show up. When she hears voices, she always wants to know whether my husband has come home and whether it's time for him to sit down and have a nap together. Anyhow, the book that we're talking about today is called Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi, if I pronounced that correctly, I hope. She is an author that comes out of Alabama. She was born in Ghana, and this book was published in 2016 by Anchor Canada, which is, kind of interesting. So Homegoing is a generational novel that spans the time of pre-slave trade in Africa. That's where it begins. And the book includes a matrilineal line because it pretty much is through the moms 90% of the time. The story goes through the moms, and there is a family tree that I had to refer to many times. Everybody's got cool names, but each character is written about independently. So what happens is one leader in a tribe in Africa decides that his village is going to get involved with the British, not so much in the area of goods and services kinds of trades, but in slaves. And so they begin to accumulate quite a lot of wealth and become embroiled in the castle. And this is happening in Ghana. Well, they call it Cape Castle, so Accra is a city that's nearby, so it's not really given a name at that point. This family's involvement in the slave trade comes to haunt them. What happens is two sisters become separated, and one ends up becoming a slave and is in the castle, imprisoned in the dungeons below, while a relative, her half-sister, is upstairs having become the pseudo-wife of the governor of the castle. And they don't know that the other person is where the other person is. So we see the woman who stays in Africa and her generational stories, and then we see the woman who has to be shipped off to America and the results of that. What happens in each story? The author, Yaa Gyasi, is a very good short story writer, and you can tell that in the chapters. Each story or each chapter is almost complete in itself, except that as it's part of the book, we know that we're going to be seeing the next generation. And they almost read discreetly. You could pick this up and just read about Kojo and read his chapter, and everything would be just fine. You'd enjoy it, and you could put it down, and you could come back later and read about Ebena, and again, it would be a discrete chapter or short story. So, losing my train of thought, but I think what is important about this book is the prose. The characters are so well drawn. You really want to get to know each one of them. But she tells the story so well. And the settings, the details, the crisis that each character undergoes are so well depicted that you're really in the story. You're not distracted in any kind of a way. And I think one of the things that I really enjoyed about this was that each character had sort of a single bad thing happen to them, and you see the consequences of what that means. One character was in a fire as a youth, well, really a baby, I guess, and you see his life through the effects of the scarring from the fire. And not each character having multiple bad things happen to them like some stories do, where you just think, oh my God, is anything else going to happen to that character? No, each chapter deals with a discrete character and a discrete crisis, but you see the rollover effects in the next generation. So that was pretty interesting. What I didn't like about this book is that as we get towards the end, I'm starting to lose track to the matrilineal line. I'm starting to, especially as we get into the modern era, I anyhow started to forget who belonged to who and what the train was. There are 8 generations in this story, so I guess that's not surprising. But the stories get a little bit shorter and a little bit less described, so that as we get to the last 4 chapters, I kind of was ready for the ending. The other part of it was that while I was reading the ending, we were having a power outages, two power outages. So first I'm reading the book by just natural light, and as the evening progresses, we get our power back. Everything's good. I'm reading another chapter, then the power goes out again, and we resort to candles, and then my husband figures out, oh, there's a battery downstairs, we can turn on a light, so read it by light, and it just got really choppy. And I think this is a book that it's good to dedicate the full time to each chapter. So chopping it up in your reading time allotment it doesn't do the book service really, and it doesn't do yourself any good. You kind of lose the flow on it. It's like some books you can put them down, pick them up. This is a keep it up kind of a book. So in Goodreads, I checked to see what had happened, and they've given it an overall average of 4.5 stars, and most of the reviews were pretty positive. Some people felt that it was a shortened version of Roots. If you read that back in, what was that, in the 70s? I don't remember. I wouldn't say that. I can see the relationship, but in Roots, my gosh, I think that was 6 or 7 books. So, no, there's no way that you can compare the detail and the anxieties, and you just can't get that kind of intensity in this short of a book. The other thing that people said was they were a series of vignettes. Well, okay, yeah, that's true. But I would think of it more as sort of generational traveling. The stories are written so that you really just need to get that story to understand what happens through that whole lifespan of that individual character, and enough of that rolls over into the next chapter that you don't have to keep really going back and forth and referencing grandmothers and great-grandmothers and so on. And of course, part of the tragedy of this story is that you do lose your ancestors. Especially on the side where the slavery is taking place, one of the characters is sold into slavery before he's born. His mother's pregnant, and she's stolen from her. She's a free African American, but she gets caught up in some of the pre-Civil War chaos that happened from some of the laws that were made in the south of the U.S. So anyhow, he has no connection to his family at all, and this is for him a real issue. Of course, that's just one part of his storyline, and so we get to see that against his actual dilemma that he's facing and how it impacts the following generation. So I really liked it. I was surprised by it. I'm not usually very good at, I thought it was going to be sentimental, and I thought it was going to be all, yay, aren't we great for having survived kind of a book, but it wasn't. It was a really in-depth look at how, through the different eras, the African side of the slave trade and the North American side of the slave trade, there was almost an equal and balanced kind of set of catastrophes that were happening to the Africans. And we don't always think about that. We kind of forget that there was a whole lot of bad stuff happening in Africa around the slave trade as well. So to have part of your family be captured as slaves is just, you're like, how do you face that? How do you know that you're responsible for this system that actually, splits your family in half? So I thought it was a really good tension between the two continents and what was happening there. So I highly recommend this book, Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi. And let me see, in Canada you can purchase it for around $21 in paperback. And of course, always go to your local bookstore. They're always better than anything else you could purchase from. And have a good read. So the cat stayed sleeping. That's great. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.